Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, Richard Harris, who is the founder and CEO at Black Crow AI. Welcome to the podcast, Richard.
Thank you, Arlen. It's great to be here with you.
Yes, and thank you for joining us. Yeah, we're really excited to talk to you because, you know, as I was mentioning before we started recording, I was telling you I know why you're smiling from ear to ear with an AI company because at the time of this recording, we're in June of 2023, and it seems like at the beginning of this year, or maybe really towards the end of last year, AI just exploded. It's just like we're all things AI, and so it's really starting to really change things. And today we're going to specifically be talking about paid and owned channels, marketing channels rather, and how AI can transform the just overall effectiveness. And you're going to be enlightening us on that. And I'm really excited to see what you have to say about that. But before we do get into all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and, how you did get into what you're doing today?
Sure. So I started my career as a consultant, a strategy consultant at the Boston Consulting Group. Okay. And like 95% of people who are consultants, you eventually decide you actually want to do something as opposed to just tell someone else to do something.
Right.
And ECG with a bunch of my colleagues, actually my office mate and the woman who's in the office beside us. And we started our first tech startup, and which totally spoiled all of us because it grew incredibly fast. We sold it to, within 3 years of founding it. And so I've been doing tech startups really ever since. The genesis for Black Crow was really sort of watching. So I've been in the machine learning AI world for almost a decade now, long before it was, considered to be a real thing. It was sort of a fringe and maybe vaporware. And for a little while, 5 years ago, everyone decided they wanted to be an AI company. Yeah. So the genesis for this company actually came from the last company that I co-founded, where we had a little skunk works. This was in the travel industry, completely unrelated to what we're doing here at Black Crow. But we had a skunk works of some very talented data scientists and data engineers. And for a completely different use case, it was about really risk mitigation. Started cracking some pretty tough problems in the real-time machine learning space, meaning how do you ingest massive amounts of streaming data in real time, process it hyper fast, and create a prediction that you can push back and do all of that in about 10 milliseconds. And so we realized there were a bunch of areas that were not widely solved that we knew how to solve. And at the same time, we were watching how the machine learning AI market was evolving. And this was sort of pre-generative AI like ChatGPT, more around predictive AI, which is sort of where large enterprises first adopted artificial intelligence, which is how do you make sense of the massive amounts of data that companies generate in order to be able to predict the future of your key KPIs and then take action now to alter the course or alter those outcomes that the predictions are telling you will happen. So that was really what we wanted to do, bring the sort of what we knew was happening at the Fortune 500 level, meaning this ability to make sense of massive amounts of data and change some of the key indicators inside of a company, and bring that to basically any company. So not just for the Fortune 500, but what we say internally is to the Fortune 500,000. And so we had experience, we had a little bit of knowledge that, some things that people think can't be done can actually be done at scale. And what we started to do at Black Crow, what we're doing now, was really bring that to a much wider audience. So even if you're a Shopify store with $5 million of revenue, you can still take advantage of Fortune 500 grade data infrastructure and machine learning.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's really some powerful stuff there. Like you said, for some of the smaller businesses that aren't in the millions of dollars in revenue, but still want to be able to take advantage of all of this data and, machine learning. That's good to know that there's something out there like it for sure. Well, thank you for the background. But really where I want to start today is, as I mentioned, it's all about AI. But today we want to specifically talk about, the fact that as e-commerce is just continually evolving, wanted to see, can you describe how AI is really going to change this whole landscape of marketing, and particularly in terms of paid and owned channels?
Sure. I think there's two main ways. One is with predictive AI and the other is with generative. We focus on predictive, and that's sort of what I was saying about making sense of these massive amounts of data. And, I think there's two real areas that AI is going to change things pretty fundamentally on the predictive side. Mm-hmm. So first is the sort of core infrastructure that enables brands to recognize their users. So if you are an e-commerce, merchant, and you have traffic and repeat traffic, and they buy things and they sign up for your email newsletters, you now have a relationship with them. But a lot of the changes in the landscape, particularly what Apple has been doing with their various versions of iOS, and also in Safari with ITP, which is the sort of tracking prevention, and there's a bunch of good reasons why they're doing that, right? It's sort of getting rid of the weird gray zone data buying and selling, people following you all over the internet. Great. But it's also what they're doing is really attacking brands' own ability to use their first party data, meaning those email addresses for people who have signed up, the fact that a user is looking for menswear, not women's wear, or what have you. And because cookies expire, those have normally been the things that brands use to identify customers when they come back. Apple is making them expire in between 1 and 7 days. And so brands are unable to recognize their users. So they can't personalize, they can't trigger the normal email or SMS flows that they would trigger, knowing, oh, this is Richard who came back and he has this pair of shoes in his cart that he forgot about. And normally that would, trigger these various forms of communication. And Apple's moves have been stopping that. And so one of the key things that we do is we provide this sort of server-side infrastructure. All this, everything I'm describing takes exactly one click. So it may sound complicated, but we've made it very easy for everyone. So we sort of reestablish that ability to connect the past, the present, and the future of your users, of their behavior, of their value. And so now you can do all the normal marketing, merchandising, email, SMS that you would do. And you can also feed much better data into the platforms where you acquire customers like Facebook. And so that's really about just getting that very basic infrastructure back in place the way it was in more like 2019 before Apple made all these changes. So that's sort of step number one, is get that first party data house in order. Once you've done that, there are so many really interesting things you can do. As I mentioned, we focus on real-time machine learning. One of the key things, for example, we do is we predict the future value of a brand's users in real time as they're shopping. So 20 milliseconds, 15 milliseconds after any user action, like a click or an image view or whatever, inside of your e-commerce website, we're able to push back prediction of exactly how likely someone is to buy or subscribe, or what their future, lifetime value is, or are they likely to sign up for your email newsletter. So all these sorts of predictions we can now do in real time, high level of accuracy, and it just takes one click to install. So that's sort of like we were talking about democratizing machine learning. How do you get it in the hands of not just the Fortune 500, but everyone? And that sort of predictive analytics is pretty powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's really good stuff, just to be able to now that, like you said, Apple has made all of these changes, and all of these browsers, I guess at some point are going to be, I don't know if at some point they're going to totally eliminate cookies or the cookie tracking, or at least limit it, severely. There has to be another way to be able to track people, and the first party data is really what it's going to come down to for sure. So yeah, it's good to know that there's some options now that are available, and you guys are kind of on the forefront of that. Now, with companies that are in the paid advertising space, whether it's like the Google ads, whether it's the social media ads, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, and they're in that particular space, how do you see AI, and what can you provide an example of how AI can enhance the effectiveness of paid ads, and what type of results have you seen?
Yeah, sure. So with that sort of ability to recognize users, which is part of our platform, right? It's both data infrastructure and AI.
Mm-hmm.
So just the ability to recognize your users, to say, oh, this is Arlen coming back, and proper event tracking.
Yep.
You can now push much more accurate data. It's a product we call Smart ID, and in paid, there's a few different ways you can use our platform, or platforms like us. But with that very fundamental user identification, user recognition, you can now push much more and more accurate data into the platform. So Facebook relies on understanding user behavior on your site in order to, say, use Advantage Plus, or even in order to be able to make its algorithms work better, which say, hey, this user is someone you should target or retarget, or this user is someone that you really want to make sure, you get in front of them when we see them on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And with this sort of server side infrastructure, again, just takes a click, even though it sounds complicated, you can now send much better data to Facebook. That in turn makes your buying much, much more efficient. And so wherever you are today, and I know a lot of people have sort of suffered a bit over the last 18 months in right. social, in Facebook, wherever you are today, you can expect that to increase your ROAS to increase by 25%
wow.
or more.
Okay.
So it's pretty meaningful, especially for brands. We work with a lot of brands in the Shopify ecosystem and the Meta platforms, Facebook, Instagram. Very important source of customer acquisition for them. And when costs rise or efficiency declines in Meta, it can have a real impact on the bottom line. So that can be very helpful. Mm-hmm. Then when you get into the true predictive analytics, what I mentioned before, we can predict the future value of every user, right? Yeah. As they're shopping. And now imagine if you knew, that there's a decile of your traffic that is, not going to convert at the average 3%, but this decile, this 10% segment of your users are going to convert at 55%. Mm-hmm. And you now know that in advance. Versus another decile at the low end of your traffic that maybe their conversion rate is 0.02%. And you can know that in advance because we tell you. If you think about okay, do you want to do anything differently with these two cohorts of people that have very different future values? Well, of course, you probably don't want to spend anything at all on that bottom cohort, right? Because they're just very unlikely to buy. Mm-hmm. And on that top cohort, they're very likely to buy, maybe 10 or 20 times your average conversion rate. You want to make sure that you are getting in front of them when you have the opportunity. And so just being able to differentiate where you allocate your budget by understanding their future value, that itself is a very powerful tool.
Yeah, really, really, for sure, definitely. Yeah, I mean, just because what we're seeing now is so many brands, as far as the social channels are concerned, of course, there is the targeting that's still going on, and being able to follow the users from when they're clicking on your ad or viewing your ad on socials, and then kind of seeing them through the life cycle of your sales funnel, to being able to do that. But, like we were saying earlier, with the cookies kind of going away, it becomes more and more difficult to do those types of things. So
that's right.
Yeah. So these definitely, I mean, these things really are becoming invaluable, because otherwise it's like, how do you track these users when it comes down to it?
Exactly. And I think it's not even, it's tracking, but it's also just there's this very fundamental sort of principle that brands own their own first party data and zero party data, but also that brands are allowed to build relationships with customers, right?
Yeah.
That is just, and Apple, whether some amount of forethought and malice, is breaking that bond between brands and their users, and they're making it more difficult to establish relationships. And there's certainly, again, people are always balancing privacy versus personalization, right? When you ask people, hey, when I show up to, an e-commerce site that I've been to, do I want them to show me products that are relevant for me? Do I want them to, alert me about sales or items in stock that I've looked for before? The answer is always, yes, of course I do. I don't want to just be generic person, right? Because I have a relationship with this brand. And then on the other hand, you ask them, are you, do you want to block everything? And are you very concerned about privacy? And they'll also say yes. And so there's a balance there, right? And brands need to strike the right balance. But I think, especially when someone has opted in and said, yes, I want to have a relationship with you. I want to get your newsletter. And I'm glad that you know the kinds of things I like, so you can tailor the experience a bit for me. That shouldn't be at risk or stopped by the behemoths like Apple. And so granted, we're helping brands do things the way Apple wants them done. So fine, which is server-side, identifier that's owned by the brand on their the brand's technology. But still, I think that some of these mega players are really infringing on what I think is a very basic agreement that we all have, that consumers and sellers should be able to have a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And, I kind of get the point of Apple and the whole privacy thing, but like you said, there's two separate camps. There's a camp where people have consented, to give their information and are fine with the brands being able to personalize, customize their experience, make valid recommendation versus, people that don't want that, don't want it tracking at all costs. And so, that's fine, but it's just, you got to give some type of tools for those people that have. So basically, that's a valid point as far as Apple's concerned. They're not restricting themselves, and that's kind of the concern. So we'll see how everything plays out. Well, I wanted to kind of shift gears away from some of the other channels, the paid channels, and these other first-party data channels to some of the own channels, specifically email marketing, because email marketing, I think now it's bigger than ever. Whereas there was a point where people were saying email was going to go away. Now it's not going anywhere. It's bigger than ever. And so, how is AI going to be able to enhance these types of channels, specifically email marketing? And if you have any examples of how that enhancement works?
Sure. Yeah. So we've got a couple different approaches here, but I think some of the same principles for own channels are, they're similar to the ones we just talked about in paid channels, which is, if you want to take advantage of own channels, first you need to get people to opt in, right? They, to give them your mobile number, or to have, users give their mobile numbers or their email addresses to you so that you can engage them in various ways. And so AI, for example, can help predict. So very standard in the industry today is, you show up at a commerce site, you flash up, a light box that says, hey, 10% off your first order if you sign up for my email, excuse me, newsletter. And it works. But what AI can do is really optimize that process, right? And so it turns out we can predict when a user is most likely to actually opt in. So where in the process should they see that light box? What should the offer be? How many times should they see it? And so it turns out that there's all these variables around timing, placement, messaging, offer, and you can actually predict what the right combination is for every individual user. And when you get that your opt-in rates can just skyrocket, talking 50 to 100% higher opt-in rates. And again, that uses AI to predict individual behavior. And so that's sort of like at the beginning of the own marketing funnel, is just grow your list, right? Make that list of opted in people bigger. Then next, what can you do differently with AI and also with that sort of user recognition, smart ID I was mentioning earlier. Well, now, if you think about it, so I have all these people opted in, and now when they come back, and you probably have a bunch of brands have flows set up, right? So cadences, meaning if I look at an item for a long time, or I come back to it, or I add it to the cart but don't purchase, that might trigger, an alert a couple days later saying, "Hey, remember this thing you left in your cart? Don't forget about it." Or, "Oh, that item that was out of stock, it's back in stock." So that would normally be triggered by behavior on site. But then Apple's coming along and sort of slicing through the middle of your ability to do that, right? Because you don't know who that user is. You don't know it's the person who already subscribed to your email list. Now, when they leave something in the cart, you can't do anything. You can't send the email you would normally send. So with that smart ID, that user recognition product that I was telling you about, now you do know who those returning visitors are. And so you can get back to how it used to be and use all of your triggered email and SMS flows. So that's another way where you can just quite materially grow the amount of revenue coming from email and SMS. I think that's important because, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of folks have seen their paid channel performance, particularly social, decline, over the last 18 months as so much has been going on.
Yeah, really, for sure. And then, a lot of budgets are being cut. So people are starting to pull back from those paid channels and are looking for other more cost-effective channels. So yeah, I totally get it. Now, earlier, you kind of alluded at the fact when you were talking about some of the, I guess you could say the nuts and bolts behind all of this AI technology. And just the term itself, I think a lot of times businesses could be hesitant to incorporate any of this stuff into their whole marketing mix, if you will. Or their strategies overall, because it has a perceived complexity. Artificial intelligence. People hear that and they start to freeze up and not figure out what to do. How can businesses, specifically smaller ones, just easily adopt and implement, just a basic AI strategy that's going to benefit their marketing strategies?
Sure. Well, I'd like to think that Black Crow can be helpful. So we've, and I mentioned earlier, so I've been working in AI for quite a while, but we realized if we really wanted to bring artificial intelligence to the Fortune 500,000, not just the 500, we needed to make this super simple, one click, fast, cheap, and easy. That's how I like to refer to it. And so you can literally download our Shopify app. That's all you need to do. So there's no technology knowledge required, no data science, no artificial intelligence. Everything we've done has been to engineer out all of the complexity. And so a lot of the AI market is sort of tools for developers, right? Like by data scientists for data scientists. That's not what I think the right approach is for, the middle of the market, smaller businesses. There, it should be AI for business users, right? It should be able to just plug in. So as easily as you can use ChatGPT, which is awfully easy, you should be able to get predictive analytics, which are right at the core of the business, right? It's an asset that you should be owning, predictions about the future value of your users or recognizing your users. That's an asset that every brand should own. And we've just made that incredibly easy.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
And I should mention, everything you do, everything I've talked about here, all these different use cases, and there are plenty more. With everything we do, you can install it. We'll walk you through getting everything set up perfectly. You can just use it for 30 days. And you don't have to trust us about anything. You can just use it, see the impact on your ROAS, see the impact on your email revenue or growth in your opt-in list. And if you like it, then you subscribe. If you don't, that's fine too. And we shake hands and part ways.
Okay, well, that's good to know. It does definitely seem simple. I definitely encourage, businesses that are listening to check you guys out. Well, as we get ready to wrap things up, you kind of already alluded to the fact as far as the predictive analysis. I wanted to kind of shift gears and pick your brain as far as predictions are concerned with overall AI, so with these given rapid changes that are happening, it seems like daily right now, where do you see the future of e-commerce marketing, particularly paid and owned channels with regards to, how AI is going to push these things forward?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think on the generative side, when you see any sort of marketing material, it is very likely to be in part or in whole generated by artificial intelligence.
Right.
So the image, the
Right.
text, how specific it is to you, and there'll be privacy issues there as well. But if you remember back to like Minority Report, and Tom Cruise walks into the Gap, and there's an image of Tom Cruise telling Tom Cruise about clothes he should buy, we're headed towards that sort of world. Hopefully, it will still be in the physical world, but if Apple has their way, we'll all be wearing giant goggles, and it'll be done there. But there definitely privacy issues, like who has the data about me to serve me the right ad. And again, Apple wants that to be Apple, right? That's why they're doing this, because they want to be able to be that Minority Report personalized ad. But in general, I think more and more will be created by artificial intelligence. And then the decisions that marketers can make are now going to be supercharged by real-time intelligence, right? So whereas you kind of had to fumble around in the dark and spend budgets testing things that didn't work, you're now going to have this very sophisticated analytics, prediction, and data infrastructure very simply available to you so that you can make very fast decisions, in some cases, automated decisions based on the data, hyper fast. And that's sort of the side of the equation that we play on. So it's how do you reach more people with the things that they want in a cost-effective way? So I think both sides of the equation are going to have pretty big impacts from AI. But the core thing around, building a brand, building a customer relationship, I think we're always going to need humans involved, because humans understand humans.
That's what it comes down to. No matter how much this technology moves forward, and if we do get to the Minority Report days, like you said, where we're walking into a Gap and then we see an avatar of ourselves pitching us one of their products, if we ever do get to that. I mean, the bottom line comes there has to always be, I think, the human element really kind of navigate and help create that relationship between brand and the end customer. I don't know if there's really any way this technology can do that any better than somebody's experience and their overall intuition and just what they've been exposed to as to how they can properly sell to a customer. So I don't think there's going to be anything that can ultimately replace that. Well, this has been awesome talking to you, Richard.
Likewise.
I've definitely learned a lot. I've had others on that have talked about AI, and this is definitely going to add a lot of value to the whole AI discussion for sure, as it relates to marketing. And so I think we're just going to have some exciting years ahead of us. I know
that's
that
for sure, because we're only scratching the surface.
Exactly. That's the scary thing. So we'll see what happens. Lastly, before we close things out, I always like to switch gears just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
I once lived in a Buddhist monastery in northern India.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very interesting. How did that come about?
Honestly, I was hiking in the Himalayas, and I met these two Buddhist monks along the trail, and we sort of traveled in parallel for a few days. And I just got to talking to them, and they were the most clear-headed, compassionate, calm people I'd ever met. And when it was sort of time for us to part ways, I asked them, hey, I'd love to learn more and practice more. And they sort of handed me this piece of paper, and they said, go to this town. I was in Nepal at the time, and this was northern India. And they said, go to this town, talk to this guy, and just tell him we sent you. And I did. And I lived in a little hut and followed their rituals, and it was amazing.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, I can imagine. That's quite a story, for real. That's definitely an interesting fun fact. I'm sure that whole experience is something that you probably never forget.
I'm talking about it now on a podcast about AI. So
yeah, exactly. So it's still there in your mind. Well, that's some good stuff. And that's just kind of a testament to the fact that you got to step out. You got to kind of leave your home base, your comfort zone, and explore the world. And because you never know who or what you're going to run into.
So true.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Richard, before we do let you go, if you don't mind sharing the best way for our listeners to get in contact with you, if they do want to pick your brain anymore about this AI and how it can help in their marketing.
Sure. So you can send me a message on LinkedIn is probably the best way. It's Richard L. Harris. And if you ever want to try a free demo of Black Crow, so all the stuff we just spoke about, you can go to our website, fill out a form, and someone will be in touch.
Okay, awesome. Well, definitely we'll have the direct link to your guys' website in our show notes, and definitely encourage people to check you guys out. And as you mentioned earlier, you also have free trials, so
yes,
people can
that's right.
Can check you guys out, kick the tires.
And our website is blackcrow.ai. And yeah, once you fill the form out, we'll get you all set up, and yeah, you can just use it and see for yourself.
All right, that sounds awesome. Well, thanks, Richard. I really appreciate talking to you. I've learned a lot, and we loved having you today, the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
Thank you, Ron. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level, but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.